Hello, my name is George. We are in Anel Honey Park, just some kilometers outside of Thessaloniki. We call our park the Honey Park or the Bee Park because in here everybody from small children to adults can learn about the world of the bee and the job and the practice of beekeeping. So we will make a presentation for you as we normally do when we have visitors. But right now, due to the COVID situation, we cannot have visitors. So this is a way for the American students to experience our park. So in our park, we say that it's a happy tourism and a happy therapy park. These are some new, let's say, sectors in the beekeeping world. Happy tourism is when you visit places that have a relation with bee and beekeeping. So there are also different bee paths in many countries of Europe right now being formed. And we are one stop, let's say, for a long bee path. So in here we will show you, we will talk a bit about the bee as an organism, the insect. We will learn about the bee. Then we will say some things about the practice of beekeeping and the job of the beekeeper. Maybe someone wants to follow it, and so he or she can learn what is involved in it. And we will look at some tools of the beekeeper. We will, of course, talk about the products of the bee, what is our hive producing, and the benefits to us humans. And we will also show you our park and some plants, beekeeping plants, as we say, that we have here, that the bees like very much to gather nectar from. So, this here is our bee. We have the head, the chest, and the belly. We have the feet, the antennae. Πόσα μάτια έχουμε?
5.
And the bee has 5 eyes.
Στα δύο τα μεγάλα τα μάτια έχουν περίπου 13.000 μάτια.
Okay, we have 2 big eyes, one from one side, one from the other side. These consist of about 13,000 smaller lenses, smaller eyes, let's say. Και τα 3 είναι εδώ πάνω, έτσι.
Ναι, και τα τρία τα
And the rest 3 eyes are on the top, on the head of the bee. So let's talk a bit about the head. We said already that we have the 5 eyes. We have the trunk, which is like a very big tongue, let's say. The bees use it to collect the nectar from the flowers, which will then turn into honey. We will say how this process happens. Also, we have 2 antennae on the head, and I can show you a bit inside as well now. So this is the inside, the head of the bee, and this is the big trunk. The bee also has 2 δαγκάνες.
Στο στόμα,
2 clamps, let's say 2 clamps on their mouth, and they use them for various reasons. Also, they use them to exchange food with each other, and they use them to feed the queen, because the queen of the hive, we will talk about how the hive, the different bees of the hive. The queen of the hive is the only insect in the hive that doesn't eat by itself. It is only fed by the other worker bees. So also in here, in the head, is where royal jelly is formed by the bees, and then is given to the other bees and the queen. Then we go down to the chest, and then we go down to the belly. So now let's say some things about the bees the different type of bees in the hive. Bees are three types. We have the queen, we have the worker bees, which are female, and we have the male bees, which we call drones. So each hive can consist, depends on the number of course, can be smaller or larger, but it can even reach 30,000, 40,000, 50,000 bees inside. Mm-hmm. This depends, the population depends also on the season. In winter there will be less, in spring and summer there will be more. All these bees have only one queen. So each hive has only one queen, and this queen has a special scent, pheromones, as we say, which all the bees in the hive recognize. And this is also the way that they know that another bee comes from another hive and it's not from their hive, so they have to drive it out of their hive because they recognize it as an intruder. So as we said, the worker bees, which is also the bees that you see here, most of them, they are the smallest in size, and they do most of the work in a hive. And actually, they take up different roles depending on their age. As soon as they are born, when they go out of the honeycomb, they are ready to hatch and they go out. They first become cleaner bees, and also they feed the other young bees which have not been formed yet. So they clean the honeycomb, they take care of young bees. Then after a few days of their life, they transition to another role. They become the guards of the hive, and they stay in front of the door of the entrance, guarding the hive from other intruders. Then they will slowly start to fly. They know how to fly, but they will start to fly bigger distances and become collectors. So they will bring back in the hive pollen, propolis, and nectar. Nectar which will make into honey after. The worker bees, they don't live a lot. It depends on the season. During spring and summer, the bees work all the time. They never stop. This is why they can live for about a month. But in the winter, where they only stay in the hive, they can live 3, 4, even 5 months because they don't waste any energy. Bees are dormant in the winter. They just stay inside and they form a big sphere in order to keep a temperature and in order to survive the winter. Then we have the male bees, which are the drones. The drones are a bit bigger in size with a bit fatter belly, and their only work is to mate with the queen during the spring. Mating happens outside of the hive in the air. The queen only mates once in her lifetime. After the queen is born, she will make the mating flight, as we say, and she will mate with many drones. She will gather the sperm of all these drones in her belly, and then she will go back to her hive, and until the day she dies, the only thing she will do is to lay eggs every day. She takes a lot of sperm from the drones, and so she's able to produce thousands of eggs every day. The bee queen, is also I don't know if it's the only, maybe it's the only or one of the very few living organisms in the planet that they can choose if they want to give birth to a male or a female egg. So the queen knows that now I will lay, and she knows what the hive needs, because there is, as we say, the hive mind. All the bees in some way communicate, and we must view them, the whole hive we must view as an, let me make a bracket here and explain this, and I will go back to the queen. So as we say, as I am a full organism, and I have my eyes and my hands and my feet, and I have my reproductive organs, This is the way that we must think for a whole hive, not just a single bee. A single bee outside in nature is nothing if she is not part of a hive. So the queen is the reproductive organs of the hive. The worker bees are the hands and the legs, which she needs to make work, and also the drones are also the part of the reproductive organs of the hive. Okay, let's say some more things about the queen now that we said about how the hive is a superorganism. So the queen, as we said, goes out of the hive for the first time for the mating flight, mates with many drones, collects the sperm of all the drones, comes back to the hive, and she will lay eggs until the day she dies. She will not. So also, as we mentioned before, she will not eat by herself. She is only fed by the other worker bees, and she only eats royal jelly. But the queen can live for maybe 5 years. So how come it's such different insect than the worker bee, which lives only 1 month or a few months in the winter? So the only thing that makes this possible is royal jelly. When the bees decide to make a new queen, the queen comes from a simple egg like any other bee. It's the same egg, it's the same female egg like any other worker bee. But if the bees, the hive mind, decides that this egg, we want to make a queen out of this, they will only feed this egg with royal jelly. In comparison, the other bees are fed with royal jelly for a few days when they are nymphs, but then the bees stop feeding them with royal jelly and they feed them with other kind of food they make from pollen. So, but the queen egg is only fed with royal jelly, and this is the only factor that plays role in what the egg will evolve in, and it will evolve in a new queen, and this queen will live many years in relation to the other worker bees. So now we see how an outside factor, a food essentially, can make such a big difference in the evolving of an organism like the queen. So a very common question is, why do the bees choose to make a new queen, or how, when? So this happens if the colony, the whole hive, for some reason knows that the queen already there either is not in good condition or that they don't have a queen. The queen can of course die for many reasons, or it can stop being very effective in giving birth. So the other bees will decide essentially to kill her and make new queens, because the survival of the colony depends on it. So how do they do that? Or how do they know? As we said, if the queen is not efficient, they will kill her. If the queen dies from some other reason, maybe an invader came in the hive and ate it, maybe wasps kill her. So, because there will be no queen present, the scent, the pheromones of the queen will stop being in the hive. After a few hours, the bees will know this. So they will know that we now don't have a queen, we need to make new one. How do they do that? They choose simple eggs in the hive, which, as we said before, feed them only with royal jelly. But they don't do it in only one cell, one egg. They will do many eggs. So many queens actually will be produced, will be hatched. So the bees are sure that someone will be good. If many queens come out at the same time, they will fight, and the one who survives will stay and be the queen of this hive. If one queen comes out sooner than the other queens, it will go in the closed cells and will kill the other queens before they hatch. So she becomes now the new queen. So let's talk about the beekeeping products and let's see them also. Most of you, I think, know that bees make honey. As we said before, they gather the nectar, they mix it with enzymes inside their body, they take it out again on the honeycomb, and actually, I don't have one here, on the honeycomb, and then they pull out the humidity from the honey, and it's ready. And then they cover the honeycomb with wax, so they store it and have it ready for the winter or for whenever they need it. So this is the honey. I'm sure you all seen honey. Depends on the plant where the nectar is gathered from. The color of the honey and the consistency depends on the plant or the tree that it's been gathered from. We also have pollen, bee pollen, as we say. Now, bee pollen is gathered by the bees when they're on the plants gathering the nectar. They also gather pollen all around their body and also on their feet. They have some small sacs where they take they take the pollen, they mix it with some of their enzymes with their feet and their mouth, and they make it like a small ball and store it on their feet to bring it back to the hive. So that's why sometimes you might see some bees carrying some small colored balls of pollen on their feet. It can be yellow, it can be orange, it can be pink, it can be white pollen, everything. Depends on the plant. Another beekeeping product, as we said before, is royal jelly. Can also be gathered by beekeepers. It's a white thick substance. It doesn't taste good for most people. It's kind of acidic. So, but it has been found that it has huge benefits for humans. It can boost your immune system, and many people use it in the winter to avoid getting sick, or maybe if you get sick, to get over it faster. Now, another beekeeping product is the wax, of course, beeswax. Here you see it gathered by the beekeepers, melted and made in a whole bar. You can find it, you can buy it in the market like this. It can be used for wax, of course, candles, make candles. Can be used to make wax ointment, as we say. It is used in many cosmetic products, for example. So here we see a beekeeping frame from inside the hive. So we can see some of the products of the bee here. This is the honeycomb. So this is the wax. But this is how it is in the hive. So inside the honeycomb, this is honey, but it has been capped, as we say. It has been closed, sealed by the bees with wax. But in here we can see some honey which is not yet sealed. It's open. Maybe you can see some of the honey in here. So another not so famous, not so known beekeeping product is propolis. Maybe some of you know it, maybe some don't. This is propolis. It's like a brown or depends also on from what plants they gather it. Can be also a bit more yellow, can be red, can be a bit greenish sometimes. So what is propolis? As you see, it's very moldy and thick. I can play with it around, and if you heat it, it will melt. So propolis, the word comes from Greek, from ancient Greece. It means pro-polis. So it means before the city. What was before the city of ancient Greek cities? It was the walls. So the walls were protecting the city. So propolis is one way that the bees protect themselves from the outside world. They gather it from resins, from plants, from trunks, from resins, from other plants in nature. They mold it. Again, everything they do, it's being mixed with their enzymes. That's their secret ingredient that they all know how to do. And it can actually, how it's used, it can be used to seal holes in the hive, holes that might bring cold and wind inside. It can be used to make their entrance of the hive smaller. They will do that in the winter because they are not going out. They don't need big space. They want to protect themselves from the cold. They will do it also to make the entrance smaller in order to protect themselves from bigger intruders, like maybe snakes, lizards, bigger wasps. So let's see some different types of honey that we have here. These are, of course, not all the types of honey that Greece produces, and of course, not all the types of honey that the world produces, because we have so many types of honey from all around the world. Not all countries can produce all types of honey because it really depends on the flora and also the amount of flora that we find in each country. So, for example, a very typical kind of honey for Greece is pine honey. It's one of the biggest. We actually don't have it here. In color, it's like seeing fair honey because it's also from a similar tree. It's one of the biggest produced honeys in Greece, pine honey. Very common is wildflower honey, which is a spring honey. Comes from many different flowers from spring. Then we have honey from sage, for example, eucalyptus tree, chestnut, which is a bit bitter, for example. In general, honeys from flowers are more sweet, and honeys from trees, as pure as they are, pure means not mixed with other types of honey, because the bees, of course, will gather honey from different plants, but if the beekeeper takes the beehives to a place where there is only chestnuts, for example, then he will also take pure chestnut honey in a big concentration, let's say. Thyme honey, very popular in Greece, can only be gathered in the islands of Greece, because in mainland, of course, there is thyme in mainland Greece, but there is not so big fields, or as we said before, the bees will also gather nectar from other plants as well, so you will not get clean thyme honey. But in the islands, where the Aegean islands are bare, they don't have other trees, and they have big fields of thyme, the beekeepers are able to gather high purity thyme honey. Also honey from orange tree, which is also very sweet and of course reminds you of orange. So of course, as we said, these are not the only kinds of honey for Greece and of course of the world. So about the nutritional value of honey, it has been found by various research that it's really good for you, so eat it. It's good to substitute honey for sugar in everything you do, in everything you cook at home, even if your coffee, if you like it. It's always better to take your sugar needs from something as nutritious as honey, which is also filled with many vitamins. Now, concerning the nutritional value of honey, all honeys are considered very good if they are pure. I mean, if they are not illegally mixed with sugar, as we know that many times can happen in various food as well. So if you trust the producer and you know that his honey or her honey is pure and good, it doesn't matter what kind of honey it is. It will be good for you. However, it has been found that some honeys do have higher nutritional value than other types. Which are these? So all honeys that come from trees, and actually the honeys that come from trees, we call in Greek we call it melitoma. So they come from trees that don't have a flower on them. So how do the bees take nectar, or what do they take from there and they make honey? Usually in these trees there is some other insect on them that is like a parasite or living with the tree, and it produces some juices. For example, in pine tree there is an insect that sucks the fluid of the pine, and the bee goes and takes the remaining of this fluid and makes pine honey. The same is with fir honey, for example. But in other trees, of course, there is flower. Like in orange tree, there is a blossom. So this is where the honey of orange comes from the flower, from the blossom. But it has been found that honeys from melitomata, as we say in Greek, from trees like chestnut and pine and fir, they have more nutritional value than, for example, the wildflower honey. So let's say some things about pollination and the ecosystem in relation to honeybees. As we all know, honeybees pollinate the flowers, and in this way we are able to farm and collect all the different varieties of food that we have in our table, in the modern world, on our table. So of course the bees have been facing a lot of problems and danger in the modern world. It has been found that many pesticides that people use for other agricultural business, they harm them, they disorientate them, they cannot find their way back to the hives. And they are also burdened by various diseases that the beekeeper has to always to fight against. So about our ecosystem, if we lose bees in the planet, we will actually lose half or maybe more of the variety of food that we have today on our table, because there will be no insect to pollinate them. When we're talking about pollination, we also have to mention that honeybees are not the only insect that pollinates plants in our planet. There are also wild bees. This is other species of bees. They are not a social bee like the honeybee. They don't form a hive, but they are also very important to pollination because they also pollinate very many plants. There are also other insects that do pollination, like butterflies, even some flies do pollination. So this is just to remind us that insects in general are very important for our planet. And actually, it may be that the wild bees and other insects are more endangered than the honeybee itself, because humans do grow honeybees. We have a way to make new beehives again each year. So we must also strive to protect the other pollinators in nature, together of course with the honeybee. All right, let's talk a bit about the tools of the beekeeper and the basic work he does over the hives. So in order, of course, the beekeeper to go ready, he or she has to protect him or herself. So I'm sure you have all seen various beekeeping suits. These are jackets. We can also find suits that cover our whole body. and they of course protect us from the bee sting. Now, when we go on a hive, a good practice is to smoke the bees, and we do this with a smoker. So essentially, we put some grass, dry grass in here. Depends on what you find around you. In Greece, so many people will use pine needles to set the smoker on fire. You set it on fire, you close it, and then slowly you smoke it like this. So smoke comes out of here, and this let's say makes the bees. It's not sure exactly what it makes to them, but we know it makes them more dormant, more relaxed. Maybe it's that it gets them dizzy. Maybe that the smell doesn't let the pheromones of the hive travel so easily, so they don't recognize that they're being under threat, for example. We don't know exactly, but this is a good tool to help us work relaxed over a hive. We need also a hive tool in order to open the different parts of the hive, because they are all covered with propolis, as we said earlier, and they are sticky. So we have to open our floors, take the frames inside, they're all sticky and heavy, so we need this tool for this. Then we have a brush. We will use our brush only when we go to gather honey, or if we want to take the bees out of a beekeeping frame. So if we imagine that we are over a hive and we take up this frame, it will be full of bees, just like this one here is. So if we want to take the honey, we have to shake as much bees as we can to fall in the hive, and then the rest of them we have to gently brush them so they go away. So we take our honey and store it, and we don't of course take the bees. So let's talk about how honey comes out of the beekeeping frame, as we saw. How do we take it and put it on in jars? So as we said, usually the whole frame will be covered with wax, or some part of it, like here. So inside this wax capping there is honey. So we have to find a way to unseal it and take the honey out. So if we are amateur or smaller beekeepers, we will mostly use manual tools, like this knife here. So I will not do it now, so we don't go have honey everywhere, but I will show you the movement. You take the knife and you gently scratch on the seal, so you just take out the seal, the wax seal. So now this part also will look a bit like this part. So now all our beekeeping frame is open and the honey is ready to come out. So after that we take it and we put it on this machine, which is called the honey extractor. This is a manual one which we use by hand, and it works by centrifuge, with centrifuge force. So we will put our frame inside. And then we will give it a spin. So inside here you will see that the frames are turning with force. So this forces the honey from the frame to be sent out, and it will finally run down and we can collect it from our honey gate, as we say. It will come out of here. We will usually use a filter here and a container below. The filter will filter all the things we don't want. It could be dead bees, it could be any other kind of little dirt or garbage that can be in the hive. So it's you use a good filter, double one, to just take the honey and nothing else. Of course, in large production of honey, beekeepers don't use these machines. They use very big, huge machines and they are fully automatic. So you just feed the frames in the machine and it's like a whole production line. It will go, they are fed to a thing like this, which is a lot bigger, can take 60 frames, for example. It turns on its own and everything is being done automatic. Even the honey is being sucked by pumps and sent to big containers. So it's then mature and then collected. So that was it. Thank you very much for watching. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation. It was the best we could do in these times with these means. I hope very soon we will be able to welcome you back here in Honey Park, so you see what I showed you up close and have the real experience, which is always the best, especially tasting all the different kinds of honey and learning about the bee and the beekeeping practice from up close. Thank you very much and take care.